Hello, thank you for joining us for our candidate forum for Austin City Council District 4. This district encompasses a lot of North Austin. It straddles I-35. I'm Nathan Bernier with KUT 90.5, Austin's NPR station, and this forum is part of a series of candidate Q&As, candidate forums we're hosting for all of the Austin council districts that have elections this November. This event is being streamed live on YouTube. You can watch it at KUT.org. And it's going to be available for replay when it's all over. I want to start by introducing our candidates. Austin City Council member Greg Kassar is seeking re-election. Thank you for joining us, Greg. He's facing two challengers in this election for District 4. Ramesses II Setipendre is one of them. Thank you for joining us, Ramesses. And Lewis Herron III is the other. Lewis, thanks for your time today. All right. Well, as you may have observed, I probably mostly refer to the candidates by their first names. Keep everyone on an equal playing field, save time, keep it casual. We are just humans here. Let me tell you about the rules for this. Opening statements, 90 seconds for each candidate. Questions, they'll get 60 seconds each to respond. Now, there's a 30-second rebuttal to respond if a candidate mentions another specifically by name. And then closing statements, 60 seconds for that. I have a few just basic common sense rules. No ad hominem attacks. I don't think that's going to be a problem anyway. No offensive language or gestures. We're not going to let people run over their time too much. So let's begin with opening statements, and I believe we are going by ballot order. So that would mean we start with Greg Kassar. Go ahead, Greg. 90 seconds.
Good evening. In this moment of crisis, an economic crisis, public health crisis, and a civil rights movement, our local democracy has never been more important. What we can do together as Austin has never been more important. In my years on this job, it has never felt like a more critical moment than the one we're in right now. And our top state and federal officials, I see all the time, are making our community more unequal and more unjust. And in this pandemic, we've seen needless suffering and even loss of life because of their failures. But when we come together, we can make real change and take care of one another. Too often, I think Austin just relies on progressive branding rather than doing the real work to be an inclusive community for everyone. But when communities push City Hall, including working class parts of the city that are usually excluded, like District 4, I've seen real change. I started out as a community organizer working alongside immigrant workers, pushing City Hall before I ever ran for this seat. And those workers actually were able to get City Hall to stand up for them and for their wages against sometimes really big special interests in big construction companies. And I've seen the same thing as a council member. We've had mobile home residents take on out-of-state investors and save their neighborhoods. We've had formerly incarcerated people push City Hall to make us the first fair chance hiring city in the South. We've raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour for everybody that we can, basically, that works for the city or does city work under a city contract.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Greg.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that the time was running out, but looking forward.
You know what? Let me do this. When we're running out, I'm going to put my hand up. That means you have 10 seconds left. So wrap up your thought there.
I apologize. But just to wrap up the thought, we have so much more important work left to do and look forward to continuing to work with the community to achieve that in this really hard time.
All right. Thank you for that. Up next, opening statement by Ramesses II Setipendre. Go ahead, Ramesses. You have 90 seconds.
Hi, my name is Ramesses, and I'm a self-funded gay eco-socialist. I'm pro-Black, brown, LGBTQIA, women's rights, indigenous rights. I'm for drug and sex work decriminalization, healthcare for all, college for all, slavery reparations, living wages, abolishing police unions and qualified immunity, getting money out of politics, publicly funding campaigns, and enacting ranked choice voting, a Green New Deal, and all things progressive overall. The reason I'm running for city council is because I used to work at City Hall as a contractor, and I was paid meager wages, full-time hours, yet no benefits. My paycheck was defrauded. Yes, wage theft happens even at City Hall. And on top of that, I was treated with homophobia, xenophobia, and bullied by City of Austin employees. Well, they picked the right one this time. For the past 2 years, my council member never reached out nor answered any of my emails nor social media. My council member, Greg, has failed thus to represent me as a constituent of District 4, as well as an employee at City Hall. And I refuse. I refuse to be anyone's collateral damage. That's why I'm representing myself and challenging his position. I do not need no man to represent me. I'm going to represent myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, because you did mention Greg by name, Greg, you have 30 seconds to respond if you wish.
The issues that Ramses mentioned are really important. That's why I sponsored the effort to actually force all those city contractors to pay $15 an hour. That's why we actually are starting to now insource that work. That work that has been privatized out to private companies should become part of the city so that people can have a union and have the protections that they need.
Thank you very much. All right, the third candidate that we're going to be hearing from tonight is Herron III. Louis, go ahead. You have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
I am Herron III. I've been living in Austin for almost 40 years and been living in the district for almost, well, actually for over 30 years now. I'm a registered professional engineer, and the reason I'm running is because I am sick and tired of the way the city council is running the city. They are not running it efficiently. They're costing us money. They are not really helping out things, and especially now when they're talking about defunding the police. The city cannot run or manage a large-term project. You look at water treatment plant number 4. You look at the downtown library. You look at the tunnel, the Waller Street tunnel. They can't manage a large-term project. Then they're turning around and asking us for money for this Project Connect. That's going to be billions of dollars. You know, it's to the point where I cannot. Austin is not the town that I moved when I first started coming here in the 70s. Austin was friendly. Austin is now getting dirty. You cannot go to the convention center and worry about it. The crime is going up, even though the city will say we're a safe city. But I know I'm running out of time, but I am running because the city needs a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Now, we're going to move on to our questions now. These have been submitted by our KUT audience, edited in some cases just to sort of get to the heart of the question. And we're going to start with policing because as we sit here right now, people have been gathering outside the Austin City Hall to protest a grand jury declining to indict 2 of 3 police officers in Louisville, Kentucky. These officers were involved in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor. You probably are all familiar with this story. She was a 26-year-old emergency medical technician, was killed in her home during a botched narcotics raid. She was Black. The responding officers were white. And policing has been a major issue in Austin over the past few months. I kind of want to frame this one accurately because there's been a lot of misunderstanding. The Austin City Council voted to reduce APD's budget by at least 5%, putting that money into other city departments. The City Council also voted to move about a dozen divisions out from under APD. That was an $80 million diversion or so. And then the City Council set aside about $50 million that could be cut from the department or might not. So our first question, and we're going to start with Louis because we ended with you. So we're going to go back and forth like that just to try and keep things sort of fair as we can. Louis, what is your stance on directing the city's approach on policing and crime prevention?
I'm against the funding, the way they set it up. You know, all departments need to be looked at to see if there's a better way to do it. But the way that the city just came in and cut it, and it looks like it was just pure politics the way they cut the city council, the police budget, cutting the complete cadet classes, reducing the number of officers to the 2015 level. We're a growing city. We have a bigger population. I am for more community policing in which the officers are interacting with the community they're operating with. So I'm totally against it. But I'm also hearing, and just to let you know, in our own district, 60% was against defunding the police, and yet our council member basically voted for it. 80% of the city was against defunding the police. But you know, since I have 5 seconds, it's hard to say.
Well,
I know.
unfortunately, that's your time for now, Lewis. We're going to move on to Ramses. You have 60 seconds to respond to the question. I'll pose it again, which is, what is your stance on directing the city's approach on policing and crime prevention?
Well, yes, I do believe in divesting from APD. I believe that APD is consuming 40% of city budget is way too much. I believe that if we want to reduce crime, we have to tackle and start at community enrichment, because everybody knows that on a subconscious level that crime and poverty are linked. So if you want to get rid of crime, we would have to address disparities such as living wages and healthcare access and affordable housing and education and social capital that hinder people from living and self-actualizing properly. And what we've seen with these protests where police are shooting at unarmed peaceful protests and pepper spraying these and shooting at medics, these are war crimes. And that is why we need to transform our policing system. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Greg, you have 60 seconds. The question one more time. What is your stance on directing the city's approach on policing and crime prevention?
The killings of Mike Ramos and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd have exposed injustices that we just can no longer ignore. And so we have to change our system of public safety to honor people's civil rights and actually to make us more safe. We actually know that 911 calls at the police department tend to either oftentimes be false burglar alarms, where we should be saving police time on those, or sometimes mental health calls, where police are not the best equipped to handle those. So we should be reallocating funding from chasing down some calls, sending police officers to things that they're not best equipped to do, to have professionals like mental health responders actually solve the situation and make us more safe and avoid killings like the one we had here of David Joseph, totally horrific and needless death of an unarmed teenager in our community. We should be able to protect public safety and step up in this moment on civil rights.
Next question. Again, these are all audience questions. Do you, and we'll start with Greg Kassar and work our way back. Do you agree with council's toleration of the continued employment of Brian Manley as chief of police? And if not, will you lead an effort starting on your first day in office to replace him? Greg, you have 60 seconds.
I was amongst the first number of council members to tell the chief that he should resign. The city council, by charter, doesn't have the ability to vote on that issue. But I think for our community to heal and for things to truly get better, we need change. We need new police leadership, and I believe that all of the changes that we might make, it will be hard for people to fully believe that they will be implemented under the current system that it is that we have. When I sponsored the criminal justice reform change to stop having so many arrests and fines for low-level marijuana possession, there was resistance to that. When we said we don't want protesters getting hurt, we had protesters needlessly get hurt. And then an assistant chief got to resign with benefits after they were accused of horrible things. And so we need that change for us to really get to public safety and trust in the community.
Same question to, sorry, I've lost the order. Are we going with Ramses? Question again. Do you agree with council's toleration of the continued employment of Brian Manley as chief of police? And if not, will you lead an effort starting on your first day in office to replace him?
Absolutely. I believe in demoting the police chief via the firing of the city manager, because what we've seen in these peaceful protests, firing at unarmed peaceful protesters as well as firing at medics, is otherwise a war crime. So I don't understand how you can justify these actions by any stretch of the imagination as a political figure or as a police chief. So we need new leadership. Thank you.
And the question to Lewis Herron. Lewis, do you agree with council's toleration of the continued employment of Brian Manley as chief of police? And if not, will you lead an effort starting on your first day in office to replace him? You have 60 seconds.
No, I would not vote to replace our current police chief. He grew up in the department. He knows the city, and we need a strong police chief. Just look at just a few years ago when we had the bombings going on, everybody was for him. Now we have some issues that we need to work out. We need to upgrade. We need to upgrade our department to make sure everything is right. But no, I will not vote to fire him. And anybody who says they do, or the other two candidates that are running, they're only doing it for politics. They're not looking at the whole picture. And they want to defund the police. I support the police. Thank you.
Okay, one more public safety question here. Again, these are audience submitted questions. And this one, we're going to start with you, Lewis. This is from someone who describes themselves as a longtime District 4 resident. They say, quote, I have never openly seen the level of crime and blight that there is currently in this district. I refuse to leave my home at night out of fear for my safety. What will you do to ensure the safety of my neighborhood? Lewis, you have 60 seconds.
One of the things that I would do is I'm for getting the new police cadet classes going. I'll be pushing the council forward. I'll be showing, if I got elected and a few other candidates that are pushing for it, that the city wants our police to be staffed up, and against what the people are pushing for, more of the social, basically going more and more further left, who want to get rid of the police. We need community police. We need community action. We need to build, which we voted for years ago. We need the substation in District 4, and which Greg and the other ones are not pushing for. So I am for to have more officers to be in communities as community policing and going from that point. And I agree, we have more crime in our neighborhoods.
All right, thank you, Lewis. That's 1 minute.
In the last 6 years.
All right, Ramses, question to you. This again is from a District 4 resident, someone who says they're a District 4 resident, saying that there's more crime in the district, and they're asking, what will you do to ensure the safety of my neighborhood? You have 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, if we want to reduce crime, we need to start at community enrichment. Everyone knows that even on a subconscious level that crime and poverty are linked. If you walk through a poverty-stricken part of town, you're going to be more vigilant. So if you want to reduce crime, you have to abolish poverty. And in order to do so, we have to provide people with living wage jobs, affordable healthcare, affordable housing, affordable education, opportunities to self-actualize and gain social capital, and provide the necessary resources for people to reduce crime. In times of global pandemic, we need to restructure our society to fit the needs of people, not the wants of the 1% or the people that have the most resources. Thank you.
Thank you. And Greg, what's your response to this person who says they're from District 4 and has never openly seen the level of crime and blight that there currently is in the district? They say they refuse to leave their home at night out of fear. What will you do to ensure the safety of the neighborhood? 60 seconds.
And Nathan, quick question about the 60 seconds. I would like to explain the St. John substation issue since it was brought up. I don't know if I get 30 seconds on that.
You get 30 seconds if your name is referred to, not if an issue is brought up. I didn't hear your name, or I didn't hear you being referred to.
I was, but it's okay. You set the rules here.
Okay, well, go ahead and give your response to that.
If you want, I can address that as well. But
go ahead.
I did mention Greg's name.
Okay, I missed that. So go ahead, Greg. You have 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and then you get to answer the question.
What is being talked about at St. John shows what 10-1 can do, what district representation can do. Community members saw the city have a parking lot that was left in neglect, basically planned for a criminal justice complex in a historically Black neighborhood. And that's not what neighbors want. And so now they've really organized and pushed to make their community more safe and enriched by bringing nonprofits, recreational space, new housing that's low cost so people can stay in the neighborhood, places for their kids to play, to make that community safer and more vibrant for everyone. And so that's an example of where community members themselves in District 4 wanted their community to be better and more safe, not just by building a big courthouse or police station, by building something that they really wanted.
All
so
right.
That's not issue. And then on the question you asked, which is really important. Our city is one of the safest cities in the country, but we know that District 4 suffers disproportionately from violence and harm more than almost anywhere else in town. And that's why we need to start trying to address the economic and public health causes of violence and harm that we see in the community. We're seeing increases in harm and violence across the country because of the public health and economic crisis in the pandemic. We have to address those core issues. Our city, until this year, spent more per population size on policing than any other big Texas city. And it did not necessarily address those deep-seated issues in the district. We have to house people experiencing homelessness. We have to treat substance use crises with treatment, not just throwing somebody in jail for a night or two, because we know that doesn't fix an issue. It's time for us to really address crime and take care of that community.
All right, thank you very much. If you're just joining us, this is our KUT 90.5 District 4 City Council Candidate Forum. And what we're doing is we're speaking to the three people who are running for Austin City Council District 4. And we're going we're sort of bouncing back and forth. It's what we've been doing with these, the format we've been keeping with these debates, where we will, by ballot order, we'll start with go in one direction and then go back the other direction, trying to keep it relatively fair as much as we can in a linear time environment. But I want to move on to a different issue now, which is the pandemic, because more than 400 people have died from COVID-19 in Travis County. Austin Public Health has recorded almost 29,000 cases since the coronavirus arrived here. The numbers lately have mostly been trending in the right direction, but the interim health authority, there are some areas of concern. And one of them is, according to the interim health authority, Dr. Mark Escott, is that the flu could pack ICUs this winter like it did last winter and make matters worse. We've also seen thousands of people in Austin, tens of thousands of people lose jobs as a result of efforts to contain the virus. Here's the question. What role, if any, should city government play in helping people who've sacrificed their livelihoods in the interests of public health? We're going to go the opposite direction this time, starting with Greg Gassar. Go ahead, Greg. You have 60 seconds.
Nobody should lose their home because of the pandemic. So many people have lost their jobs or even lost a loved one. I'm in touch with people all the time that are suffering in so many ways right now. The city is pulling it out of our rainy day fund, $70 million across city programs to make sure that people in need get the help that they need. And it's still not enough. We have to push the US Senate to vote to send more relief. We have to pull even more money out of our budget while we wait on the federal government. The governor is actually sitting on $5 billion in COVID relief funds that he has refused to allocate out to communities in need. So we have to keep advocating and pushing, because people, especially in District 4, are suffering more from the virus, or have a way higher infectivity rate than, for example, the western parts of town. And there's more people that are having trouble making ends meet. So we have to keep pushing to get through this hard time.
Ramses, what's your response to the question? What role, if any, should city government play in helping people who've sacrificed their livelihoods in the interest of public health? You have 60 seconds too.
I believe that city government should really listen to medical as well as economic experts, and we really need to formulate a plan where the cure is not worse than the disease. So we really need small business resuscitation. We need medical access. We need hazard pay for those who like me, have worked throughout this pandemic, non-stop. So we really need to amp up the city government, as well as state government, as well as federal government, listening to experts, not just opinions of politicians who have no scope of knowledge, infectious disease, experience or economic experience. We really need to formulate a plan here. Thank you.
Lewis, your response: what role, if any, should city government play in helping people who've sacrificed their livelihoods in the interests of public health?
The city should do as much as as much as possible. As a city, we cannot we need to make life easy for as many people as possible. We need to, I don't have a real good, I'm an engineer, I'm not for deals, but I look at everybody should do what they need to do. The city should set limits. We need to open up small business. We need to be very liberal, help them with their phone bills, their light bills, their utility bills, help them out as much as we can. But I'm fine.
All right, thank you very much. Another question related to the pandemic, dealing with health disparities. Lewis, this one is for you first. And by the way, if you're joining us, the reason why I'm raising my hand, it's to signal to the speaker that they have 10 seconds left, in case you're wondering why I keep raising my hand. So, Lewis, about half the cases in Austin are people who are Hispanic. This is according to Austin public health data. Why this disparity, and what should the city do about it?
Well, the first question you need to ask, is it culture? The Hispanic community is a much tighter community. They're closer together. The families get together and stuff like that. Is that part causing the problem? The other problem is it basically environment? Just because we have more people living closer together. Because if you go look at New York, the biggest problem was high density. That's where we saw the infection rates are higher. But you'll hear people say it's due to social injustice and stuff like this, but it may be just because we have more people living together, or we have families that are getting closer together. Because I do know one family that lost several people, but it's just because they were a family group. And I guess I'm finished.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Lewis. Ramses, same question for you again. Dealing with health disparities, this is APH data, about half the cases in Austin, coronavirus cases, have been people who are Hispanic. What accounts for this disparity, and what should the city do about it?
Well, first we have to look at the factors and disparities that result in disproportionate COVID-19 rates in Latinx communities, as one such as being as higher rates of being an exploited, aka essential worker, and therefore higher rates of exposure to the virus, and lack of access to health care. Yes, multi-generational household affect that. Higher rates of pre-existing conditions as diabetes and asthma. But all of these are exacerbated by poverty wages and again, lack of health care. So I would further inquire epidemiologists as well as sociologists and experts in respective fields to formulate a plan. And I'd listen to medical experts to, again, devise a plan to mitigate these disparities. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Kassar, same question to you. About half the cases in Austin are people who are Hispanic speakers. Hispanic people have been disproportionately affected, according to APH data. Why this disparity? What should the city do about it?
You see in parts of District 4 positivity rates 4 times higher than some of the zip codes just west of Lamar, west of Mopac. It's not right. And we've been fighting it, and it's our number one focus. If you look at the Latino community, it is the workers who are so essential, but not given the essential protections that they need. I was talking to families who said, I know I shouldn't go to work. It's against the rules to go to work early in the pandemic, but they're denied unemployment benefits and they need to pay the rent. And so they went out to work. some of the safety protections we were trying to put in place. We were seeing that getting undone by the governor. People who are least likely to have paid sick time. So if they felt sick, still went to work. The people who are least insured. And so already being susceptible to the virus because of the lack of primary care. So we are fighting hard to make sure we focus on that community, get them the healthcare access they need, the sick time they need, the testing they need. And it is one of my office's top focuses.
Let's switch gears now and move on to another big issue that's actually going to appear on the ballot alongside y'all's names, which is Project Connect. This is a $7 billion plan to add a downtown transit tunnel and new train and bus lines to the Capital Metro system. And the vote in November, Proposition A, is whether voters should accept a property tax hike to help pay for this. We're going to ask about Proposition A. We've also had audience members ask about Proposition B, which is also related to transportation infrastructure. But let's start with Proposition A, and this time beginning with Greg Kassar. Where do you stand on Project Connect Prop A?
I've urged everyone to support Prop A on the ballot. We need a real mass transit system to address our transportation challenges. If you think traffic is rough now, imagine 10, 20 years from now when we have a population that balloons and starts to get to 4 million people in this area. We could actually have a real mass transit system that we deserve, that is fully electric, that gets you in the middle of rush hour. You won't have to sit in traffic and can get downtown from District 4 in 20 minutes and out to the airport not that much longer than that. That's what a big city needs. It's badly what our essential workers need. And it's the right thing for our city to do. Despite what is being said out there, it is a really effective and smart investment. For your everyday District 4 homeowner, it might be 60 or 70 cents a day, but think about all of the cost of not doing the right thing and continuing to be stuck in traffic without an alternative.
Thank you. Ramses, it's your turn. What do you think about Proposition A? Where do you stand on it and Project Connect?
Well, I'm in favor of it. The principal reason why I live in Crestview Station is that I have access to a metro rail as well as express buses. And for years, I used to take the metro buses. However, the train was the fastest route downtown and elsewhere because it doesn't stop. So yes, I'm in favor of it. However, I do have the reservations about the funding of it, and I don't have high hopes of it being passed by taxpayers. Looking back at income taxes, taxpayers voted against that, even though property taxes are not indicative of your income. So it's a non-issue for me. Yes, I do support it. Austin is long overdue for a mass transit system. But personally, I'm a realist and I don't have high hopes for it. Thank you.
All right. And Lewis, where do you stand on Proposition A?
I am against the way the Proposition A is. It's more because of the way they're feeding it to us. They're saying that the federal government is going to pay for it. There is no commitment that the federal government is going to pay a dime. I look at the way it's going to disrupt traffic. I don't see a large percentage of people using it. Look at the losses that we have for the Leander train. Look at the cost overruns for them when we voted to do that system and how much it cost us more than they said it was going to do. I think it's going to cost us somewhere in the neighborhood, instead of the $10 billion, being an engineer, civil engineer, I bet you the way the city does it is going to cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 billion. And the tax rate that they're going to do it, a lot of people are going to say it's just property taxes, but people are renters and all of that. They're going to see a big increase in their monthly payment.
All right. Thank you very much, Lewis. Now we're going to go back to you actually on Proposition B, which would, again, it's going to be on the ballot alongside your names. Proposition B would approve $460 million in property tax supported bonds to help pay for other transportation infrastructure, sidewalks, bike trails, pedestrian trails. Now, this is different than Prop A, which would be a property tax. Prop A is a tax rate election. Prop B being a bond election. Where do you stand, Lewis? We'll start with you On Prop B, you have 60 seconds.
There are good parts of that proposition that I can go for. I'd still like to see how they spent the money on the last time we've had a bond issue for the improvements, because they were proposing a lot of things that was not. I'm always worried about the city being like a snake oil salesman, tell us one thing and do something else. And the other thing I'm worried about right now is the city of Austin's bond rating is going to go down. We're going to be paying more for our bonds in the future. But overall, there are good things in that bond. I wish it was kind of split up a little bit more. So right now, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote for it, one way or the other.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on. Ramses, where do you stand on Prop B, the $460 million in property tax supported bonds to pay for other transportation infrastructure? You have 60 seconds.
Well, on a superficial level, I would have to support it. Again, my reservations would be having to do with the funding aspect of it. I do not want people to be priced out of their communities, especially their homes. So on a superficial level, I would support it. I would have to look at further studies and specifics to change my decision. Thank you.
And Greg, where do you stand on Prop B?
One of the things I hear most from community members and constituents is, why don't we have sidewalks in Austin? And it's because for too long we haven't put together the funding and put the things on the ballot to make it so that our neighborhoods have the basic amenities that we deserve. And I've been to way too many households where somebody's child has nearly been hit by a car, including families who have family members who have been. So Proposition B will improve intersections to make them safer, get us the sidewalks we need, have the protected bike lanes, put in the basic transportation infrastructure so we can get around and so that we can be safe.
Unmute myself. My cat was meowing in the background and I didn't want to have that come on the debate. So let's move on now to another issue that we received audience questions on: homelessness. The Austin City Council last year voted to relax rules on camping and resting in public, saying the goal was to decriminalize homelessness, stop people from winding up in jail from accumulated unpaid fines. The result is that homelessness has become much more visible in Austin. So let's get to these audience questions now. Here's one, starting with you, Greg. Camping ban. Where do you stand and what do you see as an alternative? You have 60 seconds.
In a city as prosperous as Austin, no one should have to live on the streets, period. And I believe we can end homelessness in our community and not violate people's basic human and civil rights. The ban, the criminalization of just being poor and having nowhere to go, it just wasn't right. We know that in our hearts. And so the important thing was to change our priorities from thinking that jail is a home and actually investing in the permanent supportive housing and the services that we badly need and that we haven't invested enough in generations. We know this works because, in fact, modern day homelessness as we know it really became a thing in the 80s when the social safety net and those housing programs were shredded at the state and federal levels. And so it's not a new idea to end homelessness. We can actually address this issue without violating anybody's human or civil rights.
Ramses, where do you stand on the camping ban and what do you see as an alternative? This question from our audience, and you also have 60 seconds.
Well, I believe that I'm the only candidate with experience being homeless. So I have more right and experience to speak on this subject rather than playing armchair anthropologist. Homelessness is a complex issue with many different facets, from mental health issues to drug usage to lack of family support or social capital to lack of education, living wage jobs or opportunities to climb up the socioeconomic ladder, etc., etc. So the road to homelessness has many routes to it, but little routes to exit it. And so we need to foster and change our way to policing homelessness. Yes, having people camp out is not going to solve the problem, but neither is criminalizing homelessness. How about instead of putting people into jail for their low socioeconomic status, how about we build micro apartments and give them proper accommodations and education and social capital so that they can get out of poverty and out of homelessness. Otherwise, we're not solving anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramses. Lewis, what is your position on this question from our listener? Camping ban, where do you stand and what do you see as an alternative?
I'm for the camping ban. You know, when the city council says you can camp anywhere on the city sidewalk in front of businesses, it hurts businesses. But on homelessness, my deal is for the people who want to get off homelessness and who actually want to get off, to start training programs to work with groups like Mobile Homes and Fishes. There's veteran groups that have set up things like the Mobile Homes and Fishes. And for setting up job training, to set up so they can find houses. You know, there's a lot of things to do, and it's hard to do it in 60 seconds. But I am for to train people to get out of homelessness and to work that way. So.
Thank you. And thank you all for cramming your answers into 60 seconds. I realize these are complicated issues and difficult to resolve in such a short period of time, but we got a lot of ground to cover and we're trying to keep this to under an hour. So we have another question on homelessness that was submitted to us. And Lewis, we're going to start with you this time. Here's the question. What are you going to do about the trash and junk that's being spread all over the highway overpasses by homeless people? You have 60 seconds.
We need to set up more containers. If you look at the one at the homeless camp that's right there at 183 and at Cameron Road, the city has put out containers for trash to be picked up, but we don't go out there fast enough to do it. And you'll see bags and bags. I don't know how how much trash these things are generating. But we have a massive homeless camp right there. But if we're going to support it, we have to have the city's functions go out there, set up trash barrels, require the people who are living there to at least keep everything clean. Okay.
Thank you. Ramses, again, same question to you from a listener asking about what to do about litter left by people experiencing homelessness around highway overpasses and presumably other infrastructure. You have 60 seconds.
Well, again, we really have to address the causes of homelessness and get people out of homelessness and treat housing as a human right rather than a luxury. So it's so amusing and hysterical that people have a problem with trash. Yes, of course. Where else are they going to throw their trash at? It's kind of no surprise that people are doing so because it's what else can they do? It's so there's a level of compassion and also a level of okay, this is a problem. We have not dealt with this problem. We have not tried to ameliorate this problem. So you can't complain about it because you haven't done anything yourself about it. So the community itself needs to step up and the government itself needs to step up. If this is such a ghastly sight to you, do something about it. Thank you.
And Greg, once again, same question to you. You've heard it twice already, but I'll say it again. What this listener wants to know what to do about trash spread around highway overpasses by people experiencing homelessness. Go ahead.
We absolutely need to keep our city safe and clean and to pick up trash and create more opportunities for people to be able to throw their trash away if they don't have a good place to throw it away. We are trying to rapidly expand the Violet Bag program, which essentially would bring trash service to those places. But we also have to recognize that our shelter capacity has been cut in half by COVID-19 because you can't have as many people in a shelter during the pandemic. And so there are even more people on the streets. We can see more desperation at this time. And that's why in this moment, we have to step up and house people experiencing homelessness, because then you deal with the human issue and you don't have folks living under the bridge, and you deal with the trash. There are hotels that are sitting partly empty because of the lack of tourism. This is the moment where we have to push the city administration to buy more hotels, open up hundreds of rooms for people experiencing homelessness, and it will be cheaper for us to house people. It's the right thing to do than to be picking up the trash or dealing with it in the jails.
All right, let's move on now to a related issue, actually, affordability. Austin is the most expensive city in Texas when it comes to housing. So we have a few questions here from listeners about affordability. And let's see, depending on time, we'll get to at least one or two of them. Starting with you, Greg. What do you think about capping property taxes for lower and middle income people who are being priced out of town? You have 60 seconds.
I absolutely believe we need a more progressive tax system, and we've advocated at the state to do that. The state government doesn't allow us to tax higher incomes differently. I would like to have a lower tax rate for lower income people and a higher one for people that can pay for it, but we keep hitting roadblocks at the state. And so we have to do what it is that we can. So one thing that I led on was we found a tax loophole being used by some of the most expensive properties in the city along at Lake Austin that had been there for decades. And I championed getting rid of that tax loophole. I championed in this COVID-19 pandemic sending direct economic relief to lower income people and people who've lost their jobs and lost their wages. Ultimately, we also need to change policies at the state and federal government so that the big companies that are making money, even more money in this moment, can pay their fair share and reduce the burden on those folks that can't pay.
Thank you. Ramsey, same question to you. What do you think about capping property taxes for lower and middle income people who are being priced out of town? 60 seconds.
Well, I definitely support capping property taxes because your property taxes are not indicative of your income, especially not in Austin where the property value has risen dramatically, yet incomes have remained relatively the same. So again, I do have reservations on the property taxes in general. I don't believe they're progressive, they're regressive. But again, on a state level, they don't want to tax higher income at higher tax brackets. So this is state mandated inequality. So I believe people need to step up and protest and have grassroots campaign, because it's the only way. We have state mandated poverty, state mandated inequality, and that's what people need to realize. It's not so much of a local thing, it's a statewide, even a federal proposition. So people really need to voice their opinions.
Thank you. And Lewis, same question to you. What do you think about capping property taxes for lower and middle income people who are being priced out of town? 60 seconds.
Everybody needs to pay their fair share, and properties going up and down. One of the things that we need to do is to make building cheaper in this town is to relook at all the city codes and requirements. You know, the new code next, it's not going to make anything cheaper. The city has a lot of requirements. It costs a developer, they don't like to come to Austin because it costs them over $200 a square foot to build in the city of Austin a residential house. It's just because of all the requirements. And now if you're selling a house, the city has a requirement that you got to go do an energy audit on your house. That's $200 that's added to the cost. The city of Austin has too many requirements. They set up too many things, and they need to learn how to streamline their review process. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to move along here because there's a couple, there's a District 4 specific question that someone submitted to us. And we're going to start with you, Lewis, which is, should D4 single-family residents, District 4, single-family residents receive the same Austin Resource Recovery services as homes in Hyde Park, Old West Austin, and other parts of the city? If so, what will be your first 3 steps to make this happen?
Can you explain the question a little more? I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure.
so Yeah. So, I can't confirm that single family residents in District 4 are not receiving the same Austin Resource Recovery Services as homes in other parts of town. But this person is convinced that's the case, and is, I guess, without the fact checking this question, we can make it even more broad. I mean, Austin Resource Recovery Services. Everyone puts out their trash once a week, and they're recycling twice a week. Uh, how do you prioritize Austin Resource Recovery Services in District 4? 60 seconds.
I don't see a problem with it. I don't know what the question is, because in my neighborhood, as you said, we have trash once a week, we have compost once a week, and we have recycles every other week.
Every other week.
Huh?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Every other week. And then we have twice a year big limbs, and twice a year where we're doing bulk disposal. So I'm not sure what he's talking about, because we already have that in our district. And so I don't know how to answer it, because like I said, I'm getting those services. Are they doing something in Hyde Park that I don't know about?
I don't live in Hyde Park, so I can't tell you that. Ramses, and again, I'm going to broaden the question a bit, because Austin Resource Recovery is an important service for the city. How this person in your district is dissatisfied with the service they're receiving, apparently. What do you think about Austin Resource Recovery Services in District 4, and do they need to be changed, or are they fine as is?
Well, I personally, I think this is an overly pedantic question. I'm not sure what was it trying to lead to. If this person has such a problem, I think that, they're more than welcome to question and to raise their voice, and to demand their right as a constituent from their local politician, or the agency that oversees this. I'm not quite sure what's the point of this question, personally.
All right, thank you. And it is a District 4 specific question. It might not be the best District 4 specific question we've received all night, but I'm going to put it to you too, Greg. Austin Resource Recovery Services in District 4, are they equal to other parts of town, and do they need changing in any way, or are you satisfied with those?
I think that District 4 has been underserved by a variety of city services. And I think that especially in some parts of District 4, where you have more fourplexes and sixplexes, you have dumpsters where you're seeing a lot of people, not who live in the apartments themselves, but other folks doing illegal dumping. And it's something we hear about from the city. And I've been pushing on Austin Resource Recovery and starting to talk to cities across the country about how we actually get not just equal levels of service, but to make sure that there is that everybody's streets are cleaned and picked up. And if there is a part of town where people are driving to illegally throw things away to save money from going to the landfill, then Austin Resource Recovery should be dealing with that. And so, there are steps that we're going to be taking to push Austin Resource Recovery to make sure we have adequate trash pickup in our district.
One last question here before we move on to closing statements, and it's a big one, so you still only have 60 seconds to answer it. And we're going to start with you, Greg. Again, a listener submitted question: what should Austin do to minimize emissions and combat climate change? 60 seconds.
90% of our emissions come from two places: energy generation and transportation. And we have to get to net zero emissions, because climate change is very real and is impacting us already. So on electric generation, we have gone from a dirtier utility that was like 37% renewable to one that's going to be 61% renewable in 2021. And this term, I've pledged to shut down our coal plant and really be the leading utility in the country, going from dirty energy to clean energy. And then on transportation, we need to pass Proposition A. We need an all-electric mass transit system, because once we address those issues at the utility, which are moving fast, then our biggest emitter of carbon is people sitting in their cars on their way to work, stuck in traffic by themselves. So we need to pass that mass transit plan, because it's all electric and it will help our community.
All right, Ramses, same question for you. What should Austin do to minimize emissions and combat climate change? 60 seconds.
Well, I think one, we need to really listen to climate change experts and to really figure out a new energy system that is renewable or that is based on safer nuclear options such as thorium sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Your video cut out just for a second there.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
I'll pause the timer while you adjust.
Okay. We really need to figure out a new energy system that is that is renewable or effective, because oil and gas are going to run out. So, and our electricity right now is being fueled by fossil fuels. So we really need to step away from fossil fuels into something that is either renewable or more effective or more efficient. And we really need to simply listen to experts rather than opinions of politicians who don't believe in science or climate change. Thank you.
Lewis, what should Austin do to minimize emissions and combat climate change?
One of the things that we need to do is really plant more trees, because trees take up a lot of our carbon emissions. We need to look at it instead of getting rid of our power plants, because the city council wants to go all green on our power plants. The problem is when you're looking at solar and wind, you can't, when you need them in the summertime when it's 100 degrees outside, you can't just say all of a sudden we can jack up, say we have more wind power or more sunlight to cool things down. So we need to make sure we have many things in our thing. There are ways to make our power plant, our coal plants, a lot more efficient. The city has not put the money into upgrading. That plant was built in the 70s. On cars, we need to make sure they're all running very efficient. And I'm out of time because we're going in the long.
You couldn't solve climate. No one solved climate change in 60 seconds. I'm shocked.
Well, you know how it is. Being an engineer, I have a lot of things looking at that.
Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to closing statements, and you each have 60 seconds to wrap up. I will just. We're going to start with you, Lewis Herron III. Your closing statement, 60 seconds. Go ahead.
I'm an engineer. I look at things from an engineer's point of view. I don't look at it from politics. I don't look for emotion. I look at things as an engineer. And engineers are trained to look at big problems, break them down to small problems, and solve them one problem at a time to solve a big problem. If I'm elected, that's how I'm going to look at all the issues with the city. But like I said, if you like the way the city is being run right now, if you're happy with everything, you need to vote for Greg. If you're not happy with things and you want to see change, you need to vote for me. And my website is lewisherron.com. You can email me and I will respond to your emails and tell you how I feel on certain subjects. I'm an open book. I will tell you how I feel. And okay, I'm out of time.
Let's just move along here. I know that he mentioned your name, Greg, but we're in the closing statements now. So if it's all right, we're just going to move along and hear from Ramses II Setapenre. Go ahead. You have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, just to reiterate, I'm a self-funded gay eco-socialist. I believe in people and planet over profit. I'm pro-Black, brown, LGBTQIA, women's rights, indigenous rights. I'm for drug and sex work decriminalization, healthcare for all, college for all, slavery reparations, living wages, abolishing police unions and qualified immunity, getting money out of politics, campaign finance reform, and enacting ranked choice voting, a Green New Deal, and all things progressive. I'm arguably the most progressive candidate, so I would hope voters would vote for me. And I also encourage everyone, especially all the young people, to run for office, because that is their future. That is your right. Thank you.
And Greg Kassar, your closing statement. You have 60 seconds.
I know our community has gone through such an impossible time, and I've been so proud to be a part of this city who is coming together to save lives and to save livelihoods. And I think that some of our greatest challenges still lie ahead. We can come out on the other side of this pandemic more unequal and more exclusive, or we can really show what our local democracy can do and provide jobs and save our local businesses and get ourselves off that list of such segregated cities. This is a real moment for us where, even though we don't get the support from the state and federal government that we need, where we can fight for Austin, fend for ourselves, save what it is that we care about, and build the city that it is that we want to be. And I will just keep on raising the voices of everyday working people across the city, like those in District 4, towards that end, and continue to dedicate my life to that work.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Councilmember Greg Kassar, Ramses II Setependre, and Louis Herron III, our candidates for Austin City Council District 4. Thank you for joining us and watching this, for being so civically engaged to spend time learning more about the candidates. This video will be available for replay at KUT.org. Don't forget to register to vote, and don't forget, of course, to cast your ballot. Early voting starts in October. What was the date again? October 13th or 16th. We have it all on our website, KUT.org. Check it out. Thank you all again. I'm Nathan Bernier. Have a great night, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.